Hi, everyone, and welcome to another installment of ARK Invest's Big Ideas within this academic insight series. Today, we're going to talk about Orbital Aerospace with Samson Williams. Samson, can you introduce yourself and let everyone know what you do?
Hey, good morning, beautiful people. My name is Samson Williams. Today, since we're talking about the space economy, I'm going to introduce myself as partner at Milky Way Economy, a DC, Florida-based think tank who answers the questions you can't Google.
All right, excellent. I like that. Nice, short, and sweet. So now that we're talking about, so with the ARK Invest report that came out, ARK Invest talked about in terms of space travel, they said that there's going to be a significant reduction in costs in terms of satellite launches and rocket landings due to the technological advancements, right, in terms of deep learning, mobile connectivity, sensors, 3D printing, and robotics. We had at the time of the writing of that article, didn't really have the developments like ChatGPT and GPT-4 and things like that, and with Stanford University coming out with llama and alpaca, the last couple of weeks, I'm just curious on your thoughts of, how these developments you think will be, impacting this area.
So Dr. Joel Mosier, he is the chief scientist for Space Force. He was recently at Concordia University in Wisconsin, and he was giving a lecture about sci-fi and the importance of sci-fi. Wakanda Forever. I know it's a podcast, but I just gave everybody Wakanda Forever. And part of that is we live in the future, and in the future, the cost to get upstream for rockets, that's going to be about $200 a kilo. So to put it in comparisons right now, if you're getting on depending on whose launch service you're using, you're paying anywhere between 15 and 20K per kilo, which is actually quite an improvement over historical when we had the space shuttle versus our current rockets that we use. But in the future, when I say in the future, we're talking mid-2030s, $200 a kilo. That means that pretty much anyone who wants, rather, there is a segment of the society who will want to be space tourists, who will be able to afford at peak efficiency, $750,000 to $1 million ticket. It sounds like a lot, but there's a significant number of folks on Earth who's like, hey, bet, I want to do this. And so why that's important, not just for space tourism, is that launch providers, they're the Ubers and Lyfts of the space economy. So there is a market where we have a number of launch providers who serve as the Uber and Lyft drivers of the space economy to get us up into orbit so that we can visit the Axiom Space, Sierra Space, Orbital Assembly, cislunar industry built space stations. So why that's so important is without space stations, no one wants to be stuck in something the size of a Volkswagen Bug, basically, for 3 to 5 days. You need space stations, whether you're a Deep Space Nine or a behemoth type person, you need space stations, not only for tourism, but so that academics like yourself, particularly biomedical researchers, can go into space and unlock the secret of immortality and microgravity, as well as explore how different chemicals, compounds, building blocks of DNA, RNA, et cetera, they behave differently in microgravity. And so you need space stations for that to work so that you could have scientists who are on station year round. And I'm going to pause by saying we're in the year 2023. The International Space Station has been aloft for about 22 years now, meaning for the last 2 decades, we've had a human off planet with no injuries, no severe injuries. So it's possible. And so when we talk about space stations, we are talking about not only the International Space Station, but also the Chinese space station, whose name I forget at this moment. I apologize, the coffee hasn't kicked in. But right now we have 2 space stations orbiting Earth, which sets the foundation for the real space economy. Because most people think that, hey, we're all about rockets. For the last 80 years, we've done up and out investments, meaning we're trying to get on our rockets and go up and out. But now we're looking at in orbit, satellites, manufacturing, 3D printing, and bringing those services as well as good and products down into the gravity well that is Earth. And we call that at Milky Way, we call that down and around investments.
Very interesting. So yeah, so I noted about, so whenever you say economies, you know, I wrote down a number of different things. You know, what's your thoughts on, so the first thing I wrote down was space insurance. So if those people are going out in space, right, what's this space insurance industry going to look like in your opinion?
This is space insurance is going to be fantastic. I'm going to think once upon a time that before the pandemic, that lived in Dubai, and there was already, this is 2018, a reinsurer for space insurers, particularly for rocket and launch. And so as you're thinking about this year, SpaceX is supposed to put up around 3,000 satellites. So the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, you have to file a flight plan with them to tell you what you're going to put up into space. That's how we know, oh, SpaceX by themselves, they're going to claim around 3,000 parking spots. So if you put up a satellite in space, consider that a parking spot at the mall. You want all the good parking spots. Why that's important is A, it's a land grab by SpaceX. We'll talk about that national security implications later. But I got so distracted by my angst with him for the national security issues with him claiming all these good parking spots. I forgot what I was going to tell you. What was my point? I forgot, Justin. You'll have to remind me.
All right. Well, I'm pretty sure we'll get to it once we're going through all this. But so in terms of the space stations that are currently there, you know, so like whenever you say space stations, I'm thinking like space hotels. So like how would we be able to kind of scale out that particular model? Because they're going to take up parking spaces as well, correct?
Yeah, they're going to take up those premium orbits. And so it's the Tiangong. The final phase of the Tiangong went up last year. And that's the Chinese space station, because the Chinese were never invited to the International Space Station. And so between the ISS and the Tiangong, the Chinese space stations, they are in those premium orbits, because you got to remember, things are technically falling to Earth while they're in orbit, and they have to get readjusted so that they stay aloft. And so why it's so important, the cost of rockets are going down. SpaceX and others are able to put up more satellites. They're claiming those premium parking spots. We will have more space stations. So again, Aerospace, Orbital Assembly, Axiom, Cislunar Industries will build space stations in space. So it's a gold rush, but the gold rush is actually space, meaning what physical orbit are they occupying? Because once those premium parking spots are gone, are rather occupied, they're going to stay there forever. And that's where you're going to have a couple of brand new space stations, probably owned by Merck, GlaxoSmithKline, Dow Pharmaceuticals, whose sole purpose is, how do we do bio research in orbit? Because again, your cells, they behave a little bit different. So here on Earth, your cells are under gravity. So think about it as a sponge, where if you push down on that sponge, your cells are compressed. But in microgravity, that sponge lifts up. And when you lift up your sponge as well as your cells, they fundamentally behave differently. And so we already, through the NASA's Methuselah Challenge, through NASA's Millennial Challenge and the Methuselah Project, they've already done really great research on deep tissue research for various organs. And they already grow better. They can demonstrate that they grow better in microgravity. So the real moment of why is Samson talking about medical research in space is Justin needs a new kidney, liver, heart, pancreas, aortic valve. Using CRISPR and gene therapy, we're able to send your beam or fax your genetic code up. They grow you a new insert name of organ and send it back down the well. And so this is where most people, they're like, Samson, why are you talking about the space economy like I'm part of it? There have been more people in space than there have been on the internet. And you're like, what? I'm like, yes, there's been more people in space than you have been on the internet. I see your face and I'll explain it to you. Justin, you and I have never actually been on the internet, even though right now we're on the internet. However, when we talk about humans into space, we have about 200 people who've actually been into space, like physically been there. But the rest of us, whether it's a GPS on our phone, a wristwatch, or this Zoom call right now, this podcast, that's facilitated by the space economy, which is why Elon Musk is in a rush to develop launch so he can claim all the good parking spots with his satellites, because we're all part of the space economy, because the space economy is the fifth industrial revolution. And in the fifth industrial revolution, it's all digital. And so space is a digital native place, because in space, you don't take up paper, it weighs too much. And so if you're a big digital fan like myself, if you have all these satellites and they're already distributed, then that's awesome, because that's a perfect application for blockchain. That's why we write a book called Blockchain in the Space Economy, because if you've already got a bunch of satellites distributed around the Earth, rename them nodes, and then tell us what kind of data thing you want to do on them. And this is why I'm so very excited about space in general. So first off, launch is important, but these are the Uber drivers. They make very little money. The satellite providers, the only reason launch exists, the only reason SpaceX exists for rockets was to deploy satellites, Starlink. They get most of their money off of Starlink. Why Starlink? They want to control the downstream. Upstream, little money. In-stream satellites, not so much money. Downstream, the data, because right now the data is limited to your cell phone calls, the Zoom, et cetera, your financial transactions when you're swiping your credit cards. In the future, the data will be, Justin needs a new kidney. Justin needs a new organ. Let's beam his genetic code up, 3D print, and grow that organ upstream, and then bring it downstream. And this is how you bring everyone into the space economy, so that they can see like, oh yeah, we are part of the space economy.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a little mind blowing right there. So I know that you said that there were some concerns in terms of national security in what Elon was doing. Can you expand on that a little bit?
So yeah, President Zelensky of Ukraine, he was on Twitter. You guys can't see my thumbs, but I'm making the international symbol for Twitter. And he was like, hey, Russia, through their electronic warfare, has turned off our internet here in Ukraine. And so Elon Musk got on Twitter and was like, bet, I got you. I'll Starlink you up. And just like that, he set national policy. Because imagine if, for whatever reason, China invaded Taiwan, turned off their internet through their electronic warfare, and then Elon Musk was like, oh, I got you. I'll deploy Starlink there. What would be China's response? China might not respond militarily, but they might respond financially. They're our biggest debtor. If some random oligarch in America is messing with your territorial governmental policies, one of the things you could do is A, turn off or shut down his Tesla factories, B, stop the shipment of microchips from Taiwan, which you've already done due to the invasion, and C, call up some of our debt. And so this is why, while Elon Musk is a little cavalier on Twitter with his thumbs, because he's establishing space doctrine without consulting with anyone. He wasn't voted. No one picked him. He is a taxpayer-funded enterprise. We all like to think that Elon Musk is the richest person on the planet. If you withdrew the funding he got from taxpayers through his SBIR grant back in 2008, he got $156 million for a phase 2 SBIR grant. He's actually just the modern day version of a welfare king. And so if we have the modern day version of a welfare king, Elon Musk, setting our national security policy in the fifth industrial revolution, that digital ecosystem that is space, that's a problem, because those parking lots and those parking spots that SpaceX and others are currently sitting in as they form satellite arrays or satellite constellations, they're going to govern how warfare is fought in the 21st century and beyond. And I'll pause by saying, When we say Japan is boost its military spending for 2023 and 2024 due to North Korean threats. And so as they go to look to modernize their army, Japan is not buying tanks. In the 21st century, you don't shoot at only poor countries shoot at each other with soldiers. In the 21st century, you deploy drones. You've got some kid sitting in 2,000 miles away or on the other side of the earth, talking to a satellite, controlling a drone, calling in missiles, or having the drone itself impact and destroy the target. So modern day warfare, it's not grunts in trenches. That's what poor countries do. The modern day warfare is, how do you cripple someone's electronic and infrastructure, number one, meaning if you could turn off everybody's lights, turn off the power grid, turn off the water, etc. And two, if you are engaged in conflict, what's your drone to soldier ratio? Because a drone, it costs you anywhere from, as we see in Ukraine, it costs you anywhere from the low end $500 plus the munition, let's just call it $1,000, to the high end of 150,000. But they're highly effective. And so when you have a drone army and operators who are 10,000 miles from the battlefield, one, it's super easy to replace a drone. It costs you, let's say it costs you $10,000 to replace a drone. Whereas to replace a human, you have to feed them until they're 18, train them until they're 22 years old, and then hope they don't get shot. We're fundamentally on the verge of changing how warfare is fought. And because Elon Musk owns SpaceX and they're dominating those parking spots in space, as well as those satellites, he gets to set national space policy, space doctrine, but he's not an elected official. That's super dangerous.
That's very interesting. I mean, I'm an Elon freak. So yeah, that was very interesting. Still love Elon, but so this has been very interesting. I think we're gonna have to do a part 2 because I know we're out of time. So thank you for your time, Samson. Can you let everyone know where they can find you?
Sure. You can find me on the Twitters @HustleFunBaby. Our social media in general @HustleFunBaby. I'm a hustle fun baby, not a trust fund baby. But I do have a 21-day-old baby now, and he's going to be a trust fund baby. It's ridiculous. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, Samson Williams. SamsonWilliams.com is another great place to find me. I do want to just say that as we get more assets in the space, rockets become Uber drivers. So remember that. The real value will be, how is this GIS, Geographic Information Systems, how is the data coming downstream monetized? And if you happen to be Black, a person of color, and you're like, oh, I'm never going to be an astronaut, that's awesome. The first quadrillionaire of the space economy, they won't make their money in orbit. They'll make it by monetizing the data that comes down onto the ground.
That's huge. That's huge. So thank you once again for your time, and for everyone else, until next time.